Hello, everyone. Happy Thursday. I am going to wait a couple of seconds before all of you join us. Welcome to Family Search's weekly live stream. Today we have Debbie Gertler, and we're so excited for her to be with us today because it feels like we have VIP access because she is the library assistant director here in Salt Lake City. And boy, does she have information for all of us. Debbie and I were talking earlier, and I just said, last week's class on Thursday was all about the Family Search Wiki and how it points you to all of the wonderful things and the resources that are available to everyone to discover more about their family history. And then I said, I feel kind of special because this week we have the human version of the Family Search Wiki.
Oh, no, I don't think so, but I can probably find the answer.
Yes, you can. And we're so excited for Debbie to share more with us about the special class today, which is, are you having a hard time finding your immigrant ancestor that came to the U.S.? And she's going to help us find a way to find more information about that. Debbie, tell us, before we jump into things, tell us a little bit about just who you are and why you're so passionate about family history.
It started years ago as a teenager in a class where we were all invited to bring in our family group sheets and our pedigree charts. And I was like, wow, this stuff is really cool. And so in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, this is fun. I would love to get more into that. And then I went off to college. And when I was at college, I lived with one grandmother and visited another grandmother who I didn't know a lot about, and just asked all kinds of questions. I had the big old yellow legal pad everybody's seen those, and made lots of notes. And then, of course, I'm in college, so I stored it away, got married, started having kids, and then fast forward years later, I'm working in a family history center in New Mexico because I want to learn more about family history, and it's just gone from there. I just love it. I just love how we can find out how we're connected to people, what their lives were like, where they lived. It's just fascinating.
It is fascinating, and your background is fascinating that you started many years ago, and then you followed up with that with a bachelor's degree in family history. And I am looking at your resume right now, and it says that you have had research trips to Spain, Portugal, and other parts of the United States. How long have you been working at the Family History Library for?
So I started here in 2011,
Okay.
so 14 years.
Oh my
So
goodness. That's incredible. And for those of you that aren't familiar with Debbie, she isn't just someone to share this valuable information in English. She does it in Spanish too. Tell us a little bit about your Spanish background.
Okay, so I grew up in southern Arizona, and of course, a lot of people speak Spanish down there. And all my friends were taking French, and I'm like, no, more than half my high school was Hispanic and spoke Spanish. So I'm like, no, I'm taking Spanish. I want to know what they're talking about. So I had 2 years of high school Spanish, not that that helps you at all, but fast forward to 1995, and we moved our entire family down to Chile for a job.
Oh,
My husband was working in mining then, and so we moved to Chile, and the kids were 7, 12, and 15, and we started total immersion. It was fun. I mean, we could have gotten by with just learning the bare minimum to live there, but I was like, no, I want to know the people. I want to know the culture. So I got involved in the community and in the church, and so yeah, that's where my Spanish comes from, and something that I've always wanted to do. And so I
that's
jumped
amazing.
on that opportunity.
And that foundation of understanding Spanish as a Romance language has actually enabled her to understand how to, it says, read genealogical documents in Portuguese and Italian and French. Really humble, but that she knows how to do all of those things, which is so incredible. She's got the credentials of an AG, excuse me, an AG credential. And one of the things that she is most passionate about is what? Like, what's your favorite part of family history, Debbie?
I love doing the research. I love getting into the records and seeing what we can find. And I've been to, you mentioned my trips to Spain. I've been to Spain now 3 times, maybe 4 times. Anyways, going into the archive and holding those hundreds of years old books with records in them and getting that, 400-year-old dust on your hands is awesome.
Wow.
Maybe 200,
What a
300.
special
It's just going
experience.
through minutes.
And
Yeah. And
that's not many people have, right?
yeah,
It's
no, but I
incredible.
just love going down the research rabbit hole.
Your favorite part is the research and actually, like, being in the archives and enjoying what these records have to share with us. That's incredible. I wish next time you're there, send us a picture so we can share it on one of these live streams.
Yeah, the other thing, working in the library, my favorite part about that is when I get to help people find their ancestors and make that connection and to
Yeah.
see the look on their face, and my secret goal is always to make them cry because I know if they have tears of joy, we've made the connection.
Yeah.
But yeah,
That's so lovely, and again, Debbie is really the lead for everything, all the miracles that happen at the have happened at the Family Search Library, and she gets to work with so many different experts like herself that are just so passionate about helping people like me who are always struggling with, "What next? How do I get to find that answer about my long lost ancestor and that one question that I have about where they're from or what," to make that connection, right? So today, everyone, you are in for a treat because not only do we have Debbie, who is again the Human Family Search Wiki, we're for a treat because she's going to be talking to us about tracing your U.S. immigrant family member back to their hometown. And so, for any of you that have questions like, do you have an immigrant ancestor? And have you ever wondered like where they came from, or how do I find out more information about them if you're a first generation American, or if you have a family member that, again, came from a different country and came to the States? She's going to point us in the direction of the different record types that exist, the method or the steps that you need to be able to successfully find more information about them. And so it can ultimately help you expand your part of the tree. So, Debbie, if there's one thing that you're hoping that people get from today's class, what is it? What is your hope? What are your hopes and dreams for those of the everyone that's tuning in today?
that you get one thing that's going to help you make that connection to get your ancestor back home, and we'll talk later about the big four. So when we get to the big four, pay close attention because we're going to play a little game with that.
Ooh, we love games and live streams. That sounds like so much fun. So, as we get started, let us know in the comments where you're watching us from, where you're tuning in from. We always like to hear where in the world we have our Family Search community joining us from. And then also, maybe drop a line about what country you're trying to trace your ancestors back to. You know, like you had somebody that you obviously know that came to the United States. Are you looking for a family member that immigrated from Italy or from France? I have a lot of background with my German heritage and going to Puerto Rico. And just tell us, what country are you trying to trace your ancestors to? Drop them in a comment. And please feel free, as always, to ask questions. Debbie has games planned for us. She's got a lot of really awesome information that's going to break down sometimes what seems like a very daunting task. Which is to find again our U.S. immigrant ancestor and just the information that can help us complete their story and to better understand who it is that we are today. So, Debbie, thank you so much for being with us today. We are so excited and looking forward to what you have to share with us.
Okay, well, let me get my thing queued up, and I believe we are ready to go. So as Heidi mentioned, this is tracing your immigrant ancestor back to their hometown. And we are going to talk about what information is needed to get your ancestor across the pond, and that's just a colloquialism, for getting them back across to where they came from. What U.S. record types could supply that information, and then I'll provide an overview of some international records so you'll know what to expect when you get into those records, and then we'll follow it all up with a case study so you can see the actual steps in action. So first of all, we're going to talk about the information needed to get across the pond. And this is where you want to pay close attention because this is going to be part of our game. I call it the big four. Do you know the name of the ancestor? That's usually the easy one. The name of his hometown or her hometown, that's a harder one. An approximate date of an event that took place in the home country or the hometown, and that's usually a birth or a marriage. And then another important thing to know is the family connection. So those four things: the name of the ancestor, the name of the hometown, an approximate date or the actual date of an event that took place in the homeland, and a family connection. Now, why is the family connection important? Because that will help us to identify that we have the right person once we get into the to the homeland and the land of their origin. And so, All of our ancestors, generally speaking, had a spouse. They had parents. They may have had children. They may have had brothers and sisters. This will help us tie all our information together to make sure that we find the right person. So let's start by talking about US record types that might have those 4 pieces of information, the big 4, in order to find where they're from in their homeland. And of course, the first place you want to start is at home. Are there journals? Are there photographs? Are there letters? Is there a family Bible? And when I say photographs, sometimes when an ancestor goes to a studio to take a photograph, the name of the studio is on there, and sometimes that might give you a clue as to the hometown if you can find that studio, or if you Google it and you can find more information about it. So ask around. Also ask your older relatives if they know where the ancestor might be from. So let's start with vital records. Here we have a vital record. It comes out of the state of New York, and I have pulled out the information because sometimes it's hard for you to read. And again, we're looking for the big 4. The name of the ancestor, an event in the hometown, or the name of the hometown, a family connection, and an event that took place there. So we have Salvatore. He's 24. In this case, the record gives us his actual birthplace in Gratteri, which is in Sicily, and we have the names of his parents. So the question is this enough? And now keep in mind, this is where you put your answer in the chat, yes or no. Is this enough? We can estimate his birth year, right, because of his age. So I would say on this one, yes. Did you get it right? I hope so, because this is how we're going to play this game. So yes, on this one. All right, let's move on to a death record. So here's the death record. This is from the state of Utah. This is the information that I've pulled out from the record. So you see the name. We've got an actual birth date. We've got the name of the town. We've got the names of the parents. Is this enough? I'm going to give you a second. What do you think? Yes or no? I hope you get this one right. The answer is yes, because we do have everything we need. We have all of the components. We have those big 4. All right, here's another one. This one's going to be a little bit tricky. This is a marriage. It comes out of El Paso, Texas. And no, it's not in Spanish, it's in Latin. And so I've unlatinized the names and put them in their Spanish equivalent. So we've got Geronimo Alvarez, and it tells where he's from and the name of his mother. And we've got Cruz, and it says where she's from and the name of the father and the mother. Do we have enough information? Maybe, maybe not. What are we missing? We don't have an event. So in this case, it did not give me the age of the couple. So I'm going to have to do some more research in order to figure out when they were born. But it's almost there. So if you said yes, you were close. If you said maybe, you're right. But really, it's no on this one. All right, here's another one, and this one comes from a newspaper in my hometown. This is an obituary, and sometimes an obituary can be a good choice. And so we've got the name of Felipa, and we've got her actual birth date and birthplace, and the names of her parents. Is this one enough? Give you a chance. Do we have the big 4? Yes, we do, because we have them all, right? Name, date, place, family connection. We've got it all. I hope you're doing well in the game. This next one might be a little bit tricky. Now, I'll tell you that local histories can be very helpful. And for my Gertler ancestors, this was the only place, this is not his record, by the way, this was the only place I found the name of the town, where he was from, and a birth date, and it gave his parents. So don't discount a local history. And especially for those that came early, not more late 1800s, early 1900s. So here's the history of Louis D.K. And it tells we've got Alexander, and his father's name is Louis, and we have a birth date, we have a death date. It says he came from Edinburgh, and he came to the United States in 1847. Is this one enough? I take your shot. I have 2 thoughts on this one. My initial thought is no, because what if he wasn't really from Edinburgh? I could try that because, that's a large region, and sometimes immigrants said they're from the larger place because people will know where that is. So, but I would also give this a maybe. If you could go in and you can find an Alexander who was born on the 29th of March, 1823, and his father's name was Lewis, then you've got it. But this one's a little tricky. So they're getting trickier. All right, another good source for information are ethnic newspapers. And for those of you that have Portuguese ancestry, especially those that came from the Azores or Madeira, they have some really good ethnic newspapers. There's some good ones for Germany as well. So here we've got an obituary. Again, it gives the name of the person. It tells when he was born, when he came to the US. It tells us he's from São Miguel. And we do have some names of some family members, but I will give you a hint on this one. São Miguel is the name of an island. There are many little towns and parishes in São Miguel. So now that you know that, is this enough information? In this case, I would say no, because we don't have the exact parish, the exact town in São Miguel. So we need a little bit more information. We have to do a little bit more research. All right, let's talk about draft registrations, because those can be very helpful as well, because they often have the name of a birthplace. But just keep in mind that spellings might be anglicized. They've made them into English when they were really Polish or Spanish or Italian or German. So in this case, we have the name of his hometown, and it says Radlova, Galicia, Austria. When I look this up, and thanks to my Polish experts here at the library, this is actually what it should look like, but it's not spelled like that. So keep that in mind when you're looking at this, and they've given the name of the place. You may have to do a little investigation as to the name of the place and as the name of the person as well, because sometimes spellings can be varied as well, especially if the ancestor didn't know how to spell very well. So in this case, is this one enough? We have a name, we have a birth date, we have a place. Are we missing something? I would say no, because we don't have a family connection. So we could go look in those records, and if he's the only Michael Partica in that particular place at that particular time, then great, but we may want to look and see if we can find anything about his parents. And that's where we can try some of these other records. All right, let's talk a little bit more about the draft, because I think it's important to know who had to register for the draft. This was all males, ages 18 and up, and they didn't necessarily have to be citizens. They just wanted to know who was in the country and who was of fighting age. Citizenship did not matter. And keep in mind, if you thought your ancestor might have been too old for the World War II draft, they had an old man's draft in 1942. So sometimes you can find people that are older than what you would typically think of a soldier's age, but they were required to register in this old man's draft. So another good source for looking for information on that hometown. Another good option is societies, unions, ethnic groups. Oftentimes, these ancestors, when they came from the old country, they joined together with other ancestors, and they made these little clubs and these little societies and these groups or these corporations where they shared a common interest, and it was just for their particular ethnicity. And this is a California Portuguese Union record, and so they actually had some insurance benefits as a result of being a member of this particular union or society. So we've got the information, we've got the date of the record, and we've got the name of the man and his wife, Barbara Ferreira, Barbara, it's with abbreviation, and Manuel Francisco, another abbreviation. Barbara was his wife, and it tells us that he's from Madalena, which is on the island of Pico. Again, this is an Azorean island, so it is a very specific place, but do we have enough information on this one? Give you a second, think about it. What are we missing? Are we missing anything? What we don't really have is a date of an event, do we? I mean, if Manuel and Barbara married in Madalena, maybe we could go look for their marriage, but we don't know when. So we might want to do some census research to find out when was their oldest child born? What other information can we find that will help to narrow this down? All right, another one of my favorite record types to use is border crossing records. And keep in mind, there are some for the north in Canada, and there are also some at the south for Mexico. So this is a border crossing record for Rose Boyer. And then there's a little bit of information. I pulled it out for you. It tells us she's 50. She was born in St. Hyacinthe. She has the nearest living relative in Canada, which is a brother-in-law, so maybe not as helpful. And then it also gives her nearest living relative in the US, which is her son. So do we have enough information here? And in the record, it does tell us that she's a widow. So do we have enough? What are we missing? We can estimate her birth date and her birthplace, but if there's more than one Rose Boyer, and I will tell you that Boyer, because it's one of my family lines, is super common in Canada. If there's more than one, I'm going to have a little bit of trouble. So I'm going to give this one a big maybe. If there's only one, great. But if there's more than one, I'm going to go to the Canadian Census and see what else I can find out about Rose before I make that jump. All right, this is a citizen petition for naturalization, but citizenship papers are just as well. So this is for Michael Portique, and it does give us his birth information, and it gives us the name of a town in Czechoslovakia. Now, keep in mind, I'm not a Czech researcher, although I know some. I would want to check with them to make sure that this is a legitimate town and not just a county or a district or a region. And I do have his arrival. It's important when you look at these citizenship or naturalization papers that you look at all of the images. You may find this one image, but did you know sometimes there's more information on the next page? Click on that button and go to the next image just to make sure. So is this enough? What am I missing? Figured it out? I'm going to give this one a big maybe as well, because if you didn't notice, we're missing the name of a family connection. So, and we need to verify for sure that Podrček is actually a town in Czechoslovakia. So maybe. Now this one is a real gem because you don't often see this on very early passenger lists. This is a passenger list from 1845, and it tells you the captain or who's ever recorded the passenger list gives the name of the town where they were from. And Harlingen is a town in Luxembourg. So we've got an actual place. We've got the name of the husband and the wife. We've got the children. We've got birth dates for the children. We can calculate them as well. So when you look at this one, is this enough? And I hope that you figured this out. This is a big fat yes, because we have ages, we have names, we have family connections, we have the name of a town. We've got it with this one. And you don't see that very often on these early passenger lists. Now, here's a more recent passenger list. This is 1912, and the ones that are 1906 to the present are much more helpful. But one of the important things to remember is they often have a second page. So first of all, let's see what's on this first page. So we've got the name of the man, João Bizarro, and we have his age. So he's 20 in 1912. He said he was last living in Aguapau, and this is in St. Michael's, also known as San Miguel, which we heard earlier. And then we've got his father, the name of his father, and it tells us where he's going. But as you look at the second image, the second page of that passenger list, and again, follow the line over, look to see what line your guy is on or your gal is on, and then go to that next page, that same line. I have the name of a brother and where he's the relative in the US that he's going to meet, and it gives us the birthplace. So in this case, do we have enough information? If we remember to look at both pages of the passenger list when they exist, I hope you said yes on this one. So this is definitely a yes. All right, now let's talk a little bit about Social Security applications. Again, this is a more modern record. Social Security didn't begin until 1940, but some of our older ancestors may have participated in the program and they may have had a Social Security number. If you look at this alone, we've got Alexander Kowalski, we've got a birth date. We're missing a few things, aren't we? Is this enough? In this case, I'd say no, because we don't have a family connection, we don't have a birthplace, so not enough. But did you know that you can order a copy of the Social Security application where he would have indicated his birthplace and more than likely the names of his parents. And so you can make a request from the Social Security Administration. It's an FOIA, that stands for Freedom of Information Request. And so this is the form, and there's a link, and I believe they're going to share that link with you in the chat, where you're going to want to go in and make a request for that copy of that SS5. It's going to cost you some money, but if this is the only thing you can find with their hometown on it, it's worth the money. So first you're going to click on this that says request a copy of their original application for a Social Security card. That's what you want. You don't, while the Numident is helpful, it doesn't always have all the information that you need. So when you click on that, then you come to this page that gives you more information about how to make your Freedom of Information Act request. So make sure you read through the limitations and the conditions. If it's somebody that's more recent, here's a good idea. They will only release it if the person is at least 100 years old, or the person is more than 100, at least 100 years old and they have proof of death, or if they have parents' written consent or proof of death for the parents, and then if the number holder, your ancestor in this case, is more than 120 years old, then they'll release it to you. So keep in mind of these restrictions. You may have to prove death if it was within 100 years old. All right, once you go onto the site, keep in mind that the fees, as of the time that I put this together, were $27 for a copy of the original application. Now, to do this, you're going to want to create a government login. But if you've ever gone in and checked your Social Security balance or done anything with the government, you may already have a government login. All right, so there's two ways to do this. You can do it by mail, snail mail, and it gives you all the information, and there's a form that you would print out and send in. My favorite way to do this is online, and it gives you a link there where you can access it and access the form to fill it out. And I'm going to walk you through how to do that. So again, the government login is required, and this is a little bit of information. I'm just showing you the page to see what it looks like, so you get a feel for that, and then it will prompt you to create an account or a sign in. You need that in order to pay online as well. So anything that you're going to do, you need that. So keep that in mind. And there's several options there. You can choose the one that works best for you. All right. Once you create the login, of course, they'll have you agree to their terms of service. And then you would click on next. And then you're taken to this page, and it feels like you've been launched into the outer limits. You don't know where you've gone. Go to submit request. I know it's confusing for the first time, so submit request, and then it will take you to this page where you can see the information, and then you can scroll down and read more about it and the process, and it gives you some information about what different things to put into the form, but I'll walk you through that as well. So once you go to the form to make the request to submit it, your name and address automatically fill in based on your log information. And I've just graded out because I want to keep that a secret. Nobody needs to be sending me any mail. So it's filled out. And then as you go down the page, there's different information that you will fill out. Now, you'll notice up there it says request an action office, but it actually tells you right here to select Deb's as the action office. So if you forget, you're doing this later after you've watched the class, go back and read the instructions. Nobody likes to read instructions, but read the instructions are super important. As you go further down the page, that's going to reload every time you choose one of these options. So you're just going to have to keep reloading and scrolling, but it keeps your information. Now the request type is the decedent SS5. We want the copy of the original application. We don't want the Numident because it may not have all the information that you want. So choose the decedent SS5. As you go down, again, the page is going to reload, the requester category. And personally, as a genealogist, I don't fit into any of those categories. So I always choose other. I'm other. I'm not in news media. I'm not the government. Don't fit into any of those categories. So then as we go further down, you get to choose how would you like to receive your information. How would you like to receive this? And you can choose your preference. And of course, my preference is to email because it's much quicker. So, but choose what works for you. And then as we go on, the next step is to choose how you would like to pay. And there's different ways you can do that. So choose whichever preference works for you. Just keep in mind that when you do go to pay, and we'll talk about this in a minute, it will jump you over to another site where you'll actually enter your payment information. Then the next part of it is to enter in all the information. And this is what is found on the Social Security Death Index, the SSDI. So the name of the person, if there were any other names listed, go ahead and put those in. The date of birth, because that should be on there. You may have the date of death. And then all of this stuff should be on the Social Security Death Index, but there's no penalty if you don't have every single thing. It's very helpful to provide the Social Security number, though, because they will find it much quicker. You can skip the parent information if you don't have it. I've often left it blank because I don't know it. Then once you have finished all this, you've chosen the SS5, and you to pay the $27, you'll be taken to another site for payment, and then you'll be returned back to the site so you can finalize the thing. And it tells you right here a little notice, application fee, what you're getting, and that you'll be bumped out, but they'll bring you back. So once you go to the part where you fill out your information, it automatically again fills in your name and address. And again, I've graded out, so you don't have to worry about typing that in again. And then you're all set. It takes about 4 to 6 weeks. Sometimes it takes a little longer, so just be patient. But if that's the only thing that gives you the hometown, it's worth it. It's worth the $27, in my opinion. So let's do a little quick overview of international records so you can understand why you need to have those big four. First, the different record types the most common record types that you might find in an international country would be church records, civil registration, gazetteers, and departure records. There aren't any for most countries. There are not nationwide indexes or nationwide censuses. So don't think that you're going to go to Germany and look in the 1920 census and find your person, or the 1880 census. They didn't do that in most of those countries. Very few did. So keep that in mind. Another important thing is the church records. It can be very helpful to know their religion. For some countries, if they're a predominantly Catholic country like France or Spain or Portugal, maybe not as crucial. But if it's a country like Germany, where there are Catholics and Lutherans and perhaps others as well, you're going to want to know that. In the church record, you will find christenings or baptisms. That is usually a good substitute for a birth record. You'll find marriage records. You'll find burial records, which is a substitute for a death record or a death certificate. And then confirmations as well. Keep in mind, confirmation age varies by religion. So if you're looking for those, you'll need to know that. And of course, you need to know the name of the parish. And again, as I mentioned, knowing the religion is also helpful unless you're in a country that's predominantly one religion. All right, let's talk about civil registration. These were government-created records of births, marriages, and deaths. They tend to be more recent records, but here you need to know the name of the municipality or the name of the city because they're usually kept or recorded at the city level. Now, to learn more about civil registration, you can go to the Family Search Wiki. You can search by country. You can check to see when the records are available. It also has information about the content that might be found in the record. And for those of us who don't know other languages, it will have sample records with translations, and it will also tell you where to find them. And if they're not available online somewhere, it'll probably have the name of the archive and their address where you can write and ask for a copy of the record. Gazetteers are also super important because, as I mentioned, sometimes those names are anglicized once they're in the US. And so you can use it to kind of help identify clearly what the name of the parish is or the name of the city is. You can use them to identify nearby locations for radial searches. Thinking back to our Mr. K, maybe he was from a town outside Edinburgh. If I use a gazetteer, I can find out which towns might be nearby. And then you can also use them to find out about boundary or jurisdictional changes. As we know, things change over time. There's a region in France and Germany that switched hands a bunch of times, called Alsace-Lorraine, and that can be tricky there, knowing where the records would be depending on when your ancestor lived there. So another thing that you would want to look at is departure records. Hamburg passenger lists are great for coming out of Germany because they do give the place of birth. And sometimes if they're traveling with their family, you have more information. Immigrant is one that's good for Swedish. The BYE Immigrant Ancestors Project has a variety of countries involved, and their records focus on smaller archives where maybe the big guys like Family Search or Ancestry or MyHeritage don't go in and gather the records. And so there's those places as well. Are there more? I'm sure there are hundreds more. Where should you look? The Family Search Wiki. The Family Search Wiki will help you to understand the international records and resources. You can search in the wiki by country. You can look at the time periods when they're available, the content, and all of these things that we discussed previously. To get to the wiki, you're going to go to familysearch.org, and under the search tab, hover over it, you're going to see Research Wiki. Click on that, and that's going to take you to the Research Wiki. And I'm going to walk you through a little demo here to show you. So you can start by choosing your country. There's also guided research that can help you. I'm going to type in U.S. immigration records, finding the town of origin, because I think this is an important one. It kind of gives you a recap of a lot of the things that we've discussed in the U.S. records part that will help you to know where to find that. And we should be putting the link to that in the chat. This is the page, and it covers all of those different record types that we talked about. And as you go further down, it talks a little bit about the history as well. But great section on what questions to ask relatives. Are there people that have already researched? And it walks you through the different record types. We've discussed some of them. We'll just talk about census a little bit more in the case study. The different record types that would help you to find the answer to those big four. So as we scroll down the page, you can see sample records. You can see a lot of information. This is a great source for finding out more to locate the town of origin. And it also, let's say you find out your ancestors from Sweden, go in and find out what kind of records might be available for Sweden and look to see what they might look like and where you can find them. So we've got a lot of other good resources in the wiki, so keep that in mind as well. Let's see. Oops, sorry. I mentioned guided research. There are also foreign language word lists. Or also other websites and databases. Here at Family Search, we like to be enablers. And that means we want you to find the record no matter where it is, even if it's not on Family Search. So we put that information in the wiki so people who are looking can find themselves and go in. And also for our sakes, because we won't be able to remember all of these, there really isn't a human research wiki. So I go to the wiki when I know there's a website in Portugal that I want to see, but I can't remember what the name of it is. I go to the wiki and find out what it is. There's information about record types and content, and also information about the different archives, libraries, and record repositories. All right, now let's take a look at our case study and see how it goes. So this is our starting point, and I will tell you that this is one of my children's, I think she's a great grandmother. Her name is Mary Kowalski. She was born about 1882 in Austria, Poland, and she was married about 1900 in New York. So now this is our starting point. What can we go from here? Our next steps. You always want to find them in all the census record possible, because that will give you a clue as to when they might have come. It'll also provide likely the names of family connections as well. You can use it to determine, did they marry before they came, or did they marry after they got here based on where the first child was born? That can be another clue as well. I'd want to find a passenger list. I'd want to see if I could find some naturalization records. And I really want to see if I can find all the records for her and her family. Because honestly, on the Gertlers, the only way I found the hometown, because they came very early in the 1850s, was looking at every scrap of paper I could find that might have his name on it. And that's how I found that local history that told me where he was from and his birth date and parents. You want to find all the records for her fan club. Now, fan club is an acronym for friends, associates, and neighbors. And this is coined by Elizabeth Shown Mills. These are people that associate with our family, and in this case study, this is going to be key to solving the issue of who were her parents and where was she from. All right, so what did we do? First step, census records. New York has a state census on the 5s, and then of course we have the federal census on the 10s. So I found her in the state census in 1905, federal in 1910, federal again in 1920, state in 1925. I did find her in 1915, although I don't have it listed here. And I found her in 1930 and in 1940, and you can see a consistent pattern. They lived in Saratoga County, New York. So let's take a look at those. This in green is what I just, pulled out from the 1905 census. It's the relevant information. And look who's living in the household. Louis Kowalski and Frances Kowalski, father-in-law and mother-in-law, because Mary's husband is the head of the household. So great. Now I've got the names of her parents. I've got the family connection. They tell me they're from Austria, Poland. In 1910, we noticed that Frances is missing. She must have passed away. Louis is a widow. I've got a little bit more information as well. And it also tells me that Mary says she came to the US in 1896. In 1920, I have Mary, and again, her father, Louis, is living in the household. I've got years of immigration, but neither of them have naturalized, and we'll talk a little bit about that. In 1925, her husband had filed his naturalization papers. Mary, as a woman, didn't necessarily have to file those because she was married, so keep that in mind. And Louis, it doesn't give any status about his immigration. This is a state census. In 1930, by that time, Louis has passed. And then in 1940, I've got more information. Again, consistent across the board is that Mary says she came in 1896. So my next step is who and when to search. I have Louis Kowalski and his wife, Frances. I now have a daughter named Mary. Did she come with her parents? Louis says in the census records that he came in 1900 or 1901, and we noticed that Mary said 1896. So I'm guessing they probably didn't come together. And keep in mind the name variations. You saw them as we went through the census, how many different ways they spelled Kowalski. So keep that in mind as well. So I did find a passenger list, and I've highlighted here. I'll pull out the information. So this is 1900. That fits with what Louis told me. Now you're saying, wait, Ludwig. If you know a little bit of language, you know that Louis is not going to be Polish. So Ludwig is the Polish equivalent. So he's 62, he's married, he's going to Schenectady. His last residence is Dębowa. He's traveling with Franciszka, which is Polish for Frances, and she's 58, and they have a daughter, Paulina. Now, they're going to meet their brother, or his son, their son, at 630 Blaine Street in Schenectady. That's going to be a clue that we're going to see later. So it's important to analyze every piece of information on these immigration cases. So naturalization records, according to the census, Louis or Ludwig never filed. Mary's husband, Matthew Pegg, did file his papers, but as a married woman, as I mentioned, Mary would be covered under her husband. There wasn't really any need for her to file for citizenship. So finding all the records for her and her family. I've found a burial record for her husband. I found him in the 1900 census in Schenectady. Look where he's living, 630 Blaine Street. We've seen that before, haven't we? So now we're pretty sure we're on the right track to finding the right family. I found his obituary. He died in January of 1947. It does not give his birthplace. All right, so let's go ahead and let's take a look. I want you to see where you can find that house information in the census, because this is an important clue that you need to remember. So the house information is generally written, or the street information is generally written up the side, and the house number is written in those first few columns. So this is the census in Schenectady where Matthew is living at 630 Blaine Street. And it's an important clue. All right, now next step, find all the records for Mary and her family. So for Mary and Matthew's children, found him in all the census records. I was able to find some marriage and death records. They didn't help a lot. So then I turned to Lewis, Barry's father, and lo and behold, I found the marriage of a son, Alexander Kowalski. And I'm pretty sure this is them. He marries in Schenectady, New York. And we have Louis Kowalski and Francesca Bula, which matches very similar to the passenger list that we saw before. Next, I find Lewis's obituary, his funeral notice. So he died in Saratoga Springs. Remember, that's where Mary and her family were in the 1920 census and those years previous. And the body was taken to Schenectady, where he had a son, Alexander, and 2 daughters. So now I'm really hot on the trail. Then I find another obituary. This was written in Ballston Spa. This is very close to where the family lived in Saratoga Springs. It didn't have a lot of information about origins, but now I know for sure that I'm on the right track with the Fite family. So with my new clue, I'm going to look for all the records I can find for Alexander Kowalski. So I find him in a census record in 1910. He's in Schenectady. He's a carpenter. I found his marriage record, which I told you about previously, which named his parents. I found his obituary, which named his sister, Mrs. Mary Peck. And the jewel of that obituary was that Peck was not Matthew's Polish last name, but it was in the obituary. I found out his last name is Partika. That is super important for when I work on getting Michael across the pond, which I have already done thanks to this research. And then the jewel, the cherry on top, was the Declaration of Intent that he filed in 1913. Let's take a look at it. So this is his Declaration of Intent. He's 29. He's a carpenter, which is great. That matched the census. I've got a birthplace and a birth date. I find out he's in Schenectady, New York. This matches what I found in the 97 Prospect Street, matches what I saw in that census record. I find out when he came to the U.S. I also get his last residence in Poland, Pogorska Wola. And so AH stands for Austria-Hungary, by the way, in case you were wondering. It goes on to say that he renounces his allegiance to the Emperor of Austria and the King of Hungary. That's what they need to do when they do the Declaration of Intent. They declare that they want to become a citizen of the U.S. and they denounce their previous ties to their old country. It tells us he arrived at the port of New York on or about the 4th of December, 1902. And this record is dated 22 November, 1913. So now, what do you think? Do we have enough information? We have the big 4. So we've got the name. We've got a hometown for Mary's brother. We've got a birth date, 26 February, 1884. And we've got the family connection. We've got the names of his parents, Ludwig Kowalski and Francesca Bula. So just for fun, let's go check out the passenger list. I know when he came and I know the name of the ship. That would be my further proof, and also finding that actual record in Poland. So we're going to do those 2 things just to wrap this up. Here is the passenger list. It was very easy to find because I had all the indications from his Declaration of Intent. So there it is right there. And then I've got, it tells me he's going to see his brother-in-law, W. Olsielski, at 630 Blaine Street in Schenectady, New York. I'm like, yay, I'm so excited. Now the trick is, can I find him in Poland? And this is where I called along my Polish experts to help me out. And happy to find out that the records, because they were Catholic, are in Latin, so I can actually read them. And this is his birth record. Now you'll notice that the date is off a little bit. That is not unusual, so don't be thrown off if the date of birth is off a little bit. But I have Louis or Ludwig Kowalski, and I've got the names of his parents, where he was born, and then I've got Franziska, his wife, and the name of her father, and these came from the parish records in Pogorska Wola. And so I've got it all wrapped up. You can see it's down here at the bottom of the page, Alexander. So this is what we found. We found the names of the parents. We found the place. We know that they're brother and sister, so even if I don't ever find Mary's birth record in Poland, which I haven't yet, I do know her parents now, and I know where they're from, and I can find more research on this family, and I have actually pushed the lines back. And then the residence place on arrival, that was one of the excuse me, one of the key pieces of information, that 630 Blaine Street, because it brought all the family together in one place. And again, as I mentioned, the birth date was off a little bit, but I'm okay with that because everything else matches. So, tips and strategies. Find every record of your ancestor in the US. And as you can see from this case study, sometimes it takes a combination of documents. Sometimes you have to research the whole family to get the answer. You have to use that fan club, friends, associates, and neighbors. A radial search and international records, if you're not finding them in exactly the right place. So if I didn't find him in Pogorska Vola, I would probably have tried the nearby parishes as well. So, all right, one last chance for you to tell me what you've learned. What are my big four? What information do I need to get the ancestor across the pond? And I'll give you a chance to type it in while I take a drink of water. Remember, name of the ancestor, a date of an event in the hometown, a place of an event, the actual name of the hometown, and the family connection. If you got all four, pat yourself on the back. What US record types could supply that information? Just type in one. I showed you a ton, but there's a lot of them there. Maybe type in the one you've never tried before. And lastly, what kind of international records and resources you might expect to search in once you've crossed the pond. And for Alexander, it was a church record because that's what was available in the area in Poland where he lived. So I hope this has been super helpful for you. It's been a lot of fun. I loved doing this research, and I will say it wasn't a slam dunk. It took several months of me pondering on this and going back and poring over all of the different records. Is this them? Is this them? Looking at every scrap of paper in order to crack this one open. So thank you so much for participating today. And if there are questions, I'll be happy to answer them. And again, Research Wiki, use that. It will give you some more information as well. Oh, I can't hear you, Heidi.
Sorry, we're just having so much fun. I cannot believe this. We have more than 700 people tuning in. This is just incredible. I feel like you've hit the Family Search world record.
My personal record is Roots Tech of 2024 when I was like the lead off class for that day, and I had ended up with over 13,000 views. So.
Oh my gosh, yeah. Well, it's so
the subject, it's not me.
Someone just commented how inspiring your class has been, and I really love and appreciate the information you shared with us and the examples, because how special it is to know that you've seen that this is possible when we use the resources that are available to us on Family Search or Ancestry, or just find all of these resources that finding answers is possible. I think that sometimes it's a little bit daunting for people like myself to be like, where do you start? But you gave us all of these wonderful hints and tidbits to understand how to get there. And it takes time, right?
Oh yeah. No, like I said, that one took me months to figure it out. And the good thing for those of you that are watching is it's been recorded, so you can watch it again and again and pause and try your own searches and take full notes.
Yeah, and speaking of just how these recordings are available and classes are available thanks to Family Search and our mission of connecting people everywhere for free, one of the things that it says at the bottom of the screen is that you can watch hundreds of free family history classes like this one at rootstech.org. For those of you that aren't familiar with RootsTech is the largest family history event in the world, and it's brought to you by Family Search. And Debbie and her colleagues and experts that aren't even a part of Family Search, give of their time to be able to present information like this during this grand event. It takes place in March every year, but RootsTech is year round. And so if you go to rootstech.org, you can access classes like this one. And Debbie, you gave this at RootsTech, right?
I did. Yeah, it wasn't live streamed, but I did get it at Roots Tech, and I really wanted to get it recorded because I know much more people can benefit than the couple hundred that were in the room.
Absolutely. So you doesn't matter what family history experience you have or you don't have, there is there are classes for everyone. There is something for everyone. And so please go to rootstech.org. And the best part about it all is because I know that many of you are tuning in, you're probably at work, or maybe you're from the comfort of your living room, or you're listening to us on the go. The really awesome part about rootstech.org is that you can listen to these phenomenal speakers and instructors at your convenience on your timing. Time is a really big, it's, I think it's one of the most valuable things nowadays. And so you can go and you can tune in whenever you please. Debbie, thank you so much. I think that it was so cool to hear about the fan club reference and how it is that it's like, okay, everyone that exists has friends or associates or neighbors that have documents that can help inform what we're looking for when it comes to the missing pieces. And so those are things that I will definitely not forget. Let's see if there are any questions. I know there's been a lot of comments. People have just been commenting like crazy. Okay,
Good.
so um, one thing that somebody brought up that I thought was interesting, and you brought this up as well, was not to that if you need to look for the four, but you can also look for the four and using a combination of documents. Is that right?
Yeah, for sure. That's probably the most likely way that you're gonna find it is through a combination of documents, as you saw with the case study. It's not just one and done. Every now and then you luck out and you find the one and done, but 99% of the time it's gonna be this one and then this one and then that one and then yeah, putting it all together.
Thank you so much. There's also a lot of people that have been commenting, have been mentioning obviously the different types of records that you mentioned. Can you just give us a quick rundown again of like what are those records that people can then the go-tos to find more information about your ancestors? You talked about the census, you talked about birth records. What are also other records that we should just keep on top of mind?
Yeah, so the vital records, which is your births, marriages, and death, your census, your military records, especially if they're more recent, the Social Security index, and then don't forget those things like county histories and obituaries, and honestly, any piece of paper that might have your ancestor's name on it is something you want to look at because that might be the clue, especially for the people that came really early, let's say pre 1850. Everything. You wanna look at anything and everything that might give more information. Sometimes even, like, in colonial in a land record, they might a deed record might say where they were from in the home country, so any piece of paper, and that, link that I showed you in the wiki, has a list of a bunch of naturalization records, citizenship records, all
Yeah.
kinds of stuff.
That's incredible. Thank you. And for those of you that are like, what links is she talking about? We have dropped them in the comments for your convenience. So the syllabus for today's class, the I know that you mentioned the government website that people can go to find and there's like some payment that's needed, but it's well worth the effort and the payment to find that little tidbit that you might be missing. But all of those links are in the comments, everyone. So wherever you're watching us from, go to the comments and you can click there and you can tap into all of the wealth of information that Debbie has shared with us. Debbie, if there's one thing that you want people to remember and take away from this, you mentioned it earlier, but can you just remind us again, what is that one thing that you want us to walk away with?
Well, for sure it's the big four. Make sure you have those four pieces of information. And probably the other thing most crucial is to look at every scrap of paper that might have your ancestor's name on it or their family's name on it, because that's going to be key.
Thank you so much, Debbie. That's golden right there. And I think that what's really cool is that there's just so much focus at Family Search of finding what you or granting access to people for free at familysearch.org. But the really awesome if you flip it on its head, there's this other key emphasis, which is adding what you know. So before your family members pass away or these beautiful memories that people that you know uh, that are alive before they pass away, it's just so important to document what everyone knows so that the future generations don't have to go through all of these Sherlock Holmes type of scenarios of like looking for that one piece of information. So familysearch.org, whether it's the past or the present, you can use all of the different the different experiences that we have to document what you know now so that you can help people in the future just understand your family and your experience, past, present, and future. That's what it's all about. Debbie,
I
thank you
was
so
I
much.
was I was so thankful that I went and visited with that grandma and wrote down the stuff on the legal pad because it was years before I actually got to it, and her memory wasn't as good by then, and was so glad that I did that.
Thank you
So,
so much, and we're so glad that people that are passionate like yourself have stepped up to the plate and have studied this and are just so willing to share your knowledge with us. It means the world to us. So everyone, again, every Thursday, just like the banner says at the bottom, every Thursday at 11 a.m. Mountain Daylight Time, you can tune into Family Search live streams like this one for free. And if you're like, man, this is great, I'm not sure that I'm available every Thursday, that's okay. That's what rootstech.org is there for. And again, this is brought to you by Family Search, and we're so grateful, Debbie, for your time. Have a wonderful day, everyone, and good luck on your family history journey. Take care. Thank
bye.
you. Bye.